In this module, we'll cover using Coastal Explorer underway, how Coastal Explorer presents information while underway using cruise mode, activating routes, and features that are only available from the cruise mode user interface, features that you'd use underway. To begin with, the flashing green icon for our vessel indicates the boat is in dead reckoning mode. If I right-click on the vessel, I can select my GPS source. Currently, I'm in a building, so there is no good fix available, so dead reckoning is the only thing that's going to work. We do have live AIS data, though, coming from an internet feed, so you see valid AIS targets. I'll put the vessel into simulated motion, going 5 knots, or roughly 5 knots, and zoom in, and notice the blue predictor line coming out of the front of the vessel, the straight line. This indicates our vessel's predicted position generated from its current course over ground and speed over ground in some time period. To find out that time period, go to the Boat tab on the right-hand side, click, and down at the bottom it says predictor line 3 minutes. So that indicates where we'll be at 3 minutes. If I change that to 4 or 5 or 6 or 7, notice how it gets longer. And notice how all the predictor lines get longer for all the vessels on the screen, my own ship and the AIS targets. It's very handy for figuring out where we're going to meet somebody. I'll reduce it back down to 3 minutes, and notice they all get shorter. This black line on the chart is a route created in an earlier module. If I click on it and zoom out, we can see that this is a route that goes from in the San Francisco Bay to out by the bay entrance buoy. I'm going to right-click on that route and select Activate Route. In the Route Monitor instrument, over on the right-hand side in the task pane, we created that in an earlier module, the Route Monitor is now active. It's showing ETA, time to go, and range to the active waypoint at this point, Bay Bridge. If I zoom in, we can actually see that there is a magenta line from the vessel to the waypoint. So it shows us where we are with respect to our route. So our cross-track is slowly increasing. I might need to turn my vessel a little bit so our cross-track won't be quite so much. It's also showing range and ETA for the rest of the waypoints in the route, including the destination waypoint. Some of this information isn't really very helpful. To know that we're 7.46 nautical miles from waypoint number 3, I'm not sure where waypoint number 3 is, but the ones that have names, such as Alcatraz and the Golden Gate Bridge, those are pretty useful. If you followed the methodology during the Navigation Objects module where we talked about creating routes and naming some of the significant waypoints, you'll have this effect. Also, notice that there are more waypoints than will fit in this window. This is a scrollable list, so you can click and drag that up and down if you need to. Right-click over the Route Monitor and uncheck the option to show unnamed waypoints. That turns off the unnamed waypoints, the waypoints with 3-digit numeric names, and just shows the ones that I assigned names to previously. So now we know when we're going to pass the Bay Bridge, when we're going to pass Alcatraz, and when we're going to pass the Golden Gate. Much more efficient way to look at ETAs. Since we were discussing AIS targets, let's zoom out to where we can see some AIS targets there along the bay. Perhaps to make these easier to see, I'll use the Highlight Objects command. There, now they stand out a little better. I'll click the chart to dismiss that window. The AIS target list can appear in a number of places. The Vessels tab on the right-hand side of the screen shows a complete list of all the AIS targets we're receiving at this minute. It's a big list. You can scroll through it. Click on a target and it will highlight that particular target on the screen. The Tracking tab at the top of the screen also gives you the same list and the ability to sort it based on names or CPAs, TCPAs, that sort of thing. This is a very big list. Notice in the Vessels tab, it's showing a threshold of vessels passing within a quarter mile or outside of a quarter mile of our route. If I go to the main menu in the upper left-hand corner and select Options, and in the list of options select AIS, here are controls for showing names and predictors, other targets, what to do with lost targets, and also where the threshold for the danger CPA, closest point of approach. Right now it's a quarter of a mile. If I change that to a half a nautical mile, and click OK. Notice our threshold now reflects a half a mile. I'll close the tracking list. I'm going to go back to the boat by clicking the Go to Boat button. I'm going to click the Highlight Marks button to give me a normal display. I'll turn my vessel to follow my course. And now we notice that there's a possible collision coming up. It's being highlighted in red over there. If we have speakers hooked up, it'll warn us about that. So now we're going to talk about features seen under cruise mode. I'll press the F12 key and the program switches into cruise mode. Takes over the whole screen. Looks more like a chart plotter. Across the top of the screen there are buttons. We'll go over those in detail. When the cursor is over the chart panel, the top of the screen is an information panel. Notice at the top on the left-hand side, it's displaying the latitude and longitude of the cursor. As I move the cursor around, the latitude and longitude values change. And to the right of that, it's also showing the range and bearing from the boat to the cursor. So if you want to know what the bearing is from your current GPS position to the end of this pier, just put your cursor there and notice that's 295 and it's 1 nautical mile from the boat right this minute. To the right of that, it's showing chart data for the cursor's position. So it's showing depth contour values. So here we're in a depth contour of 30 to 60 feet. Across that boundary now we're in a 60 to 90 foot contour. And on the right hand side of the screen, it's showing the name of the chart and close by objects. To bring the buttons back, simply move the cursor to the top of the screen. The first button is the reset button. The reset button is a sort of oh darn button. Perhaps I've panned the chart away because I'm looking at the bridge. I want to see what's going on over there. And all of a sudden I need to get the boat back on the screen again. Quickly, if I go up and I click the reset button, and it restores a preset configuration of center boat, north up, 1 to 10,000 scale, and a single screen if you'd split the screen. If you'd like a different default configuration, such as 1 to 25,000, zoomed out a little bit, so I'll zoom out to 1 to 25,000, and you want the program in look ahead mode, so it puts as much chart area in front of the boat as possible, you can program that as the reset button. Simply set the screen up the way you want it, as I have it here, and move the cursor up and click and hold on top of the reset button until it beeps. And it should be about 3 seconds. So I click and hold. 1, 2, 3. And it beeps at me. And now we've redefined the reset. So if I pan the screen over someplace else, I zoom in, and now I hit the reset button, it takes me to 1 to 25,000 look ahead mode, and the boat's on the screen. Next to the reset button is the screens button. The screens button allows you to save up to 9 different custom screens layout, similar to the preset buttons on a car radio. By customizing the screen, perhaps I want 3 windows, each one at a different scale, so I'll press the 3 key. The keyboard shortcut for 3 windows is the 3 key on the keyboard, so I press 3, we get 3 windows. I want this top screen to be in course up mode, so I click that to go to course up. Be zoomed way out, not quite that far out. Be zoomed out to 1 to 100,000, and I want to be in center boat mode. So I've got that screen configured. I want the lower screen to be zoomed in about 1 to 50,000, 1 to 60,000. I want vector chart display and look ahead mode as it's set right now. I go to look ahead mode, so now that one's set the way I want it to, and I want my main screen to be the way it is right now, 1 to 25,000, look ahead, north up. And perhaps I want these windows to be a little bit smaller so I can grab that divider and drag it over, and that's the way I want this. I want to use this kind of screen configuration on a regular basis. So to tell the program to remember that, I go up to the screens button at the top of the screen, click it, choose the preset I want, screen number 3, click and hold that 3rd position, 1, 2, 3, and it beeps at me, and it's now remembered that particular configuration. I'll switch back to one window using the screens button in the lower left hand corner, where I can select one window, and now we've got one window. And now if I want to quickly get back to that custom configuration, I go back to the top of the screen, select screens, click the preset button that I set up, and there we go. I'm going to switch back to one window by using the 1 key on the keyboard, the shortcut key. So now we've got one window. Next to the Screens button is the Man Overboard button. Clicking the Man Overboard button drops a Man Overboard icon on the screen, giving you a way to get back there if somebody or something went overboard. Let's zoom in to see where that is. Next to the Man Overboard button is the Event button. The Event button is similar to Man Overboard. I'll zoom in so we can separate these easily. And I'll click the Event button, and we've created an event. An event is a special mark whose name is a timestamp. If I go to the Properties panel, we see the name of that object because it was the last thing that was there. I make some notes. Saw a whale. Go back to the General. Give it a name if you want, or just the timestamp. And if we click Show Description, it'll actually show that name, that text right next to the icon itself. The F5 key is the keyboard shortcut for an event. So if you drop something overboard and quickly need to mark it, hit the F5 key and it'll insert an event. Similarly, the keyboard shortcut for Man Overboard is the F4 key. So pressing F4 drops a Man Overboard icon, an additional Man Overboard icon. How do we get rid of those marks if we created them accidentally? Hopefully they're an accident. Click the particular mark, such as the Man Overboard, and hit the Delete key on the keyboard. It goes away. Click the event mark on the screen, right-click on it, and Delete Event is a choice. Select Delete Event, it's gone. To show the next feature, I'm going to zoom out a bit, and I'll move up, and we'll look at the Nearby button. Click the Nearby button, and it shows nearby marks, guidebook entries, and conditions, meaning tides and currents. Notice if I move over top of these various objects, they're highlighted on the screen so we can see where they are. If I look at guidebook information from Active Captain, Coast Pilot information, and also if I'm looking for nearby tide and current stations, there they are. Even though they're not displayed on the screen right now because I have tides and currents turned off, we can see where are the closest things to the boat right now. So that's what the Nearby button does. Clicking the Route button gives me the ability to activate and deactivate a route, add a new route, and quick access to route commands. In the upper right-hand corner, the GPS icon allows me to select from various GPS sources, as well as the ability to have the program automatically select the GPS source with the highest accuracy, and enable or disable tracking by checking or unchecking that box, and also start a new track. Oh, look, we have a collision coming up. I better turn my simulated vessel so we clear this boat bearing down on us. If I click on the vessel, we can find out information about it. It tells me he's underway at 21 knots. He's moving pretty good. In the right-hand corner of the screen is the clock icon. Clicking the clock icon gives us access to the daylight, dusk, and night modes. I'll switch back to daylight. And there are keyboard shortcuts for that. Control-I, so if we're in daylight mode, Control-I takes us to dusk. Control-I again takes us to night. Control-I again takes us back to daylight. There's also a screen brightness slider. This won't have any effect on the video as I dim this down or brighten it back up, but my screen here is actually getting much dimmer and much brighter as I adjust that slider. And the last cruise mode function is the cruise mode icon itself in the upper left-hand corner of the screen. Simply clicking the cruise mode icon once drops down the planning mode user interface so I can access those functions. Double-clicking the cruise mode icon switches from cruise mode to plan mode. So that's a fast way to get out of cruise mode. Just double-click on the cruise mode icon. Once you're in planning mode, another way to get back to cruise mode besides F12 is to click the main menu and select cruise mode there. And we switch back into cruise mode. So that brings us to the end of this module. Thanks for watching.